Welcome back. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at something called private variables and setters and getters or accessor methods. So to start our little story, we're going to have a story of three objects. We have a movie theater, and we're going to pretend it's just like a one-screen movie theater. It's a really small theater. They can just show one movie at a time, and that's it. And in order to gain access to the movie theater, you need to buy a ticket, and you buy a ticket at the ticket booth. And then you also have objects or people that go, moviegoers that go to the ticket booth to buy tickets to get access to the movie theater. So, what we'd like to take a look at just for a moment is that in the movie theater, you have the number of seats that are available. So, and at the ticket booth, you have the number of tickets you can sell. Now, the number of tickets you can sell depends on the number of seats that are available. And the moviegoers all want to purchase a number of tickets. So number of tickets bought. So each one of these objects, movie theater, ticket booth, moviegoers, has a related amount. So movie theater number of seats, ticket booth number of tickets, moviegoers number of tickets bought. What we're going to talk about first is this idea of a private variable or a private field. Remember, fields are the variables that describe or are contained within your object. So we don't want our moviegoers to be able to access the number of seats directly. In other words, we don't want our moviegoers going and helping themselves to a seat without first going through a ticket booth. So we need a way to restrict the object of moviegoers from accessing directly the number of seats or the seats in the movie theater. But how will we go about doing that? We do that with something called a private variable. So number of seats, so far we've just done public variables. Public variables allows a variable to be accessed anywhere outside of that object throughout the entire program. But in this case, and actually it's good program practice, always to have your variables that describe your objects, your fields, to be private. So if we want the number of seats to not be accessible by the moviegoers, we have to use something called a private variable. So we would set the number of seats for the movie theater private, but what about the number of tickets? Do we want the moviegoers to be able to directly just walk up to the ticket booth and change the number of tickets at the ticket booth? Well, no, not really. The number of tickets should be privately held by the ticket booth. You shouldn't have the tickets directly accessible by the moviegoers. So for the ticket booth, you would also want to call your variable private. And this idea of making your fields inside of your objects hidden from the rest of the program is this idea of encapsulation. You're encapsulating everything dealing with that object within that object, and we're going to restrict the way the moviegoers can access the number of tickets. We're going to restrict the way that the ticket booth can access the number of seats that are available in the movie theater. And I'll show you how to do that here in a little bit. So the biggest first key is this idea of private. So in just a second, we're going to start up a new IntelliJ project, and you can call it movie theater if you want, whatever you'd like to call your new project. And we're going to create three objects: a movie theater object, a ticket booth object, and the movie goer object. So go ahead and open up your IntelliJ project, create those three blank objects, and let's just go from there. Okay, so I've got a blank project open, and inside that blank project, we got the main class, the movie theater class, the ticket booth class, and the moviegoer class. Under the movie theater class, we wanted to have a private variable. So instead of saying public, we're going to say private. And we decided it was the string and number of seats. So the movie theater's number of seats is private to that movie theater. We should not be able to access the number of seats for that movie theater outside of the movie theater class. So we'll talk about why that creates some issues here in a little bit. So ticket booth, we wanted the ticket booth to have a private field called number of tickets available, and we want to make that a integer. I don't know why I said string earlier. And we also want the movie goer to have a private int number of tickets bought. So each one of them have a field, and all the fields are related. So when we go to our main Java class, let's suppose that we create a new movie theater object. We don't have any methods yet. In a moment, we're going to have our ticket booth be able to access the movie theater's methods or variables, moviegoer be able to access the tickets, number of tickets, etc. But right now in the main method, let's go ahead and create an instance of the movie theater object. So let's just say we've got Crown Cinema is going to be a new movie theater. So we're going to create a movie theater, and we're going to call it Crown Cinema. I have no idea if I spelled cinema correctly, is equal to a new movie theater. So let's suppose that we want to set the number of tickets that are inside of Crown Theater, or the number of seats inside of our one screen movie theater. Suppose we want to set the number of tickets to like 100. There's 100 seats in the theater. So if we go Crown Cinema dot number of seats, let's go ahead and copy that. I said Chown Cinema. Equal to, let's say 100. Notice it's already giving me an error message, and if I hover over it, it says number of seats has a private access. Now what happens if I try to save this and run it? It should give us an error message saying, hey, whoa, 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 whoa. You can't access the number of seats inside of Crown Cinema outside of the movie theater. It gives us a big old error right here. Number of seats has private access in com.company movie theater. Well, what happens if we made that public? I want you to see the difference between the two. We're going to make it private. I just want you to see what happens if it's private or public instead. If it's public, notice we're inside of our main class outside of the movie theater. We're able to access the number of seats directly. We can change the number of seats. Dot out, dot front line. Crown Cinema dot number of seats. So if we want to find out the number of seats in Crown Cinema now, we can actually print it out. 100. So we were able to access Crown Cinema's number of seats outside of the definition of movie theater, which is a bad thing, because right now you could have the moviegoers be able to affect the number of seats in Crown Cinema directly. And you don't want the moviegoers to affect the number of seats inside of Crown Cinema. You want the moviegoers to affect the number of tickets. They go to the ticket booth, they buy some tickets, it reduces the number of tickets, which in turn will reduce the number of seats. So we got a bit of an issue. Now our moviegoers can't access the number of seats. The ticket booth can't access the number of seats because the number of seats are private. They are restricted within the movie theater itself. So what do? Well, we have to create something called setters and getters. In the movie theater, we now have, we'll change that back to private, and number of seats. We have a private number of seats, and we want to be able to access those number of seats within the movie theater class. So we need something again called the setter or getter. And to do that, we're going to say public. Now, this is interesting. We're going to do public int. It's already given me a reference for that. Get number of seats. Notice I'm making this a public method. Get number of seats should tell us how many seats were available. So now we're at least able to see how many seats are in the movie theater. But we also need a public void set number of seats. You could call it whatever you want to. It's just this is a typical way of doing it. If we want to get the number of seats, we're going to do public int return number of seats. Now, what's interesting is you notice when I say return number of seats, it doesn't give me an error at all, because this method can affect the private variable inside of the class. So we're able to affect this class's number of seats directly within the definition or the methods of this class. So we're going to go public void set number of seats, and we need to take in the number of seats inside of the movie theater. So we're going to go int number of seats. Oops. And we're going to go number of seats equal to number of seats. Well, that seems a little bit weird, right? Why in the world would we want to do that? So pause for a moment. We need a way to set the number of seats inside of the movie theater class. So we go public void set number of seats. So we're passing something into right here. Notice this number of seats is not the same as this one. This is just a parameter. Probably be better to call it something else. Number of seats, maybe number of seats 1. It gave us a suggestion to do that. So we're going to set the number of seats. We're going to pass in a number. What are we going to do with that number? Well, we're going to take the number of seats that's available in the movie theater and equal to number of seats 1. So let's see if that works. Go to the main class. In the main class, we have a movie theater called Crown Cinema. Let's try Crown Cinema dot get number of seats. All right, run the program. Great, no errors, but it doesn't do anything. We got the number of seats, but we didn't actually do anything with the number of seats. So this actually returns a value. So why don't we go ahead and print out the value? System.out.println. Now we're going to print out how many seats are in Crown Cinema. Crown Cinema will get number of seats. 0. Oh, fiddlesticks. We didn't actually give Crown Cinema a number of seats. So why don't we go ahead and set this number of seats in Crown Cinema? Crown Cinema dot set number of seats. Set it to 100. Great. So now when we print out the number of seats that are available, we get 100 back. So when you create setters and getters, get number of seats, set number of seats, what you're doing, these are called setters and getters. Set meaning you set it, get meaning you get it. You're restricting access to the number of seats within the movie theater. And if you want to access those variables outside of the movie theater class, you have to use the setter and getter methods. All right, so we're going to go ahead and create some setter and getter methods here in the next video, but I'm going to show you a much faster way to do it. And then we're going to create some methods and play around with tossing some values back and forth between the movie theater, the ticket booth, and the moviegoer.